We're talking Cleveland Cavaliers. Their season recap. They're still looking for a new coach, and I'm looking to talk about their players. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I've got the perfect Canthal tilt. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok, at redrock_bball, and on Instagram, at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available on all platforms. Double bang, thumb, bell, comment, follow. Cool. We're good. We're talking Cavs. This is the 20th team we're doing in this team review series. That would mean there are 10 to go. The Cavs are a team, obviously, that knocked out in the second round of the playoffs. Struggled a little bit in that first round. A lot of uncertainty, I guess, around where this team is as we move forward for this season and moving forward. That we don't have a coach. Don't really know who it's going to be at this stage. I'm sure we'll get an answer in the next week or two, but don't know at this point, and that's not really going to impact much of our assessment on the fantasy side of things for them at this stage. Let's take a look at what we saw from this squad during the year. They finished, like, the record's fine. 48-34 is pretty good. They had, honestly, a lot of injuries. Donovan Mitchell, second half of the season, he was just like a half of the player he was before. Evan Mobley, significant injury in the mid part of the season. Darius Garland, broken jaw, missed a lot of time, never fully recovered. Like, these are their three sort of main guys out, and Jarrett Allen's the fourth, obviously. And they were hurt a lot. And JB Bickerstaff did a huge job at some point when Mobley was out and the other guys were banged up to get them to where they were. But overall, Bickerstaff was a guy that I didn't love his coaching in Memphis or when he was an interim in Houston. He improved, he impressed, but overall he's not the guy, I don't think, and I've got no problem with them firing him. He's not the guy to take them to the next level, but there's still a ton of questions that need to be answered. 18th on offense, 6th on defense. The 6th on defense, largely because of the way they employ the two big men. But is that what holds them back offensively? Is that what holds them back with their overall playoff ceiling? It is possible. Their preseason over-under was 50.5 wins. So despite having a pretty impressive season, they didn't live up to the expectations that they needed to. I had Cleveland, where did I have them? I had them at 53, which I knocked down to 52 just before the season started, so I missed by quite a bit. The injuries do impact that, but that is it's a sizable miss on the expectations for the Cavs. So overall, again, you get to the second round, you have these sort of not 50, you don't get to 50 wins. It is probably, I would say, a disappointing season. They do have a first-round pick coming up. It is pick number 20. That's not it's not a great pick. You don't expect a starter out of that pick, especially in a draft of this quality. But maybe you get a rotation piece. They've got lots of strengths. They've got lots of needs. Also, they've got lots of questions. So there's just so many different things that actually end up happening with this squad. Their most common starting lineup. There'll be no one who's watching this show who can't guess what it is. It's the lineup they use basically all the time. It's Darius Garland, Don Mitchell, Max Strus, the Winter Soldier, Evan Mobley, the Koala, and Jarrett Allen. That's their lineup. They went with that all the time. Even though Garland, Mitchell, Mobley missed time and were injured at big stretches during the year, they were still able to get those guys out there for a good period of time. Now, that wasn't the best lineup that they trotted out. They actually had a really, really strong lineup, which includes some of those players. Plus 29.9 is huge. No Garland, because he did have quite a poor season, honestly. It was Mitchell, Strus, Caris LeVert, Dean Wade, the man who does nothing with stats, but always seems to be involved in positive lineups, and Jarrett Allen. So no Mobley, no Garland, who honestly are the two guys that if this team is going to go somewhere further than where they are at the moment, it has to be Mobley and Garland that take them there. So there are obviously questions about whether that's possible and whether the team is structured well enough to allow that to be a possibility. If we look at free agency, there's not much going on there. In terms of the restricted side, it is Isaac Okoro's restricted free agency. He was the number 5 pick 4 years ago. He has never really developed offensively. Defensively, he's still really good, but he sort of sits as that player that you chuck in as a starter at times. He obviously came off the bench all of this season, apart from the games when someone was injured, and hasn't taken that step forward where on offense he just gets ignored, and that just leads to significant problems. So, look, I would expect that they bring Okoro back. I don't expect that, like, he's not done, obviously. He could still get better, but we're heading to that stage where we get the idea of the shape of the player he is. The other three guys there as restricted players are all their two-way guys: Isaiah Mobley, Amani Bates, and Pete Nance. Obviously, Mobley and Nance, brothers/sons. Isaiah Mobley's Evan's brother. Pete Nance is Larry Nance Jr.'s brother, but also Cavs legend Larry Nance Sr.'s son. And then there's Amani Bates, who was obviously that high-level prospect, struggled in college, fell down to the second round of the draft. People still froth this guy, and never really played for the big team at all this season. I don't mind taking that flyer on him where they picked him, but I don't think that he's going to end up as an NBA player. They're unrestricted free agents. It's all these washed big men. Marcus Morris Sr., who they signed late in the process. Tristan Thompson, who they signed over the offseason. And Damian Jones, who they traded for. And I would say that, unbelievably, the best of those guys was probably Thompson. Maybe you could make an argument for Morris, but he can't do it often enough. His game style is not conducive to other players around him. And I would imagine they would look to bring Morris and Thompson back, but I also don't think it matters that much whether they do or don't. They've got two players who do have non-guaranteed deals, and there's almost no doubt in my mind that they will fully guarantee these. Slam and Sammy Merrill, who was somewhat of a revelation at times, and then also undrafted rookie, who is 24, Craig Porter Jr. They converted him from a two-way into a full-time contract. We'll talk. We're going to go through 9 players in depth on this team. There's some guys we just don't need to talk about, but 2 of them will be Merrill and Okoro. Merrill and Porter, because I do think there is some value in talking about where they can go and their roles and the type of players that they are. But they're both currently non-guaranteed guys that will almost definitely be guaranteed. And then this is where things start to get, I don't know if interesting is the right word, but it's where the decisions need to be made because we're talking about expiring deals. So these players will be on the final year of their contract in the 24-25 season. And the number one there is Donovan Mitchell. Well, he won't necessarily be in the final year, but he'll have the option to be a free agent because he'll have a player option. So he is extension eligible. And if the Cavs offer him that extension and he says no, I would imagine they have to look into trading him. Now, I have absolutely no idea where this goes because there's just so many different reports on it. It's like Mitchell wanted Bickerstaff fired, he didn't get along with him. Cool, Bickerstaff's gone. So does that mean that Mitchell stays? The talk of Mitchell not being happy with the scenario, like, is he leaving? There's always rumors about New York and so many different things with Don. I honestly don't know. But we are here now. We are at decision point. And if he doesn't sign an extension, then they pretty much have to move on. But we'll find out, won't we? Caris LeVert will also be unrestricted after next season. Evan Mobley will be restricted. Now, he is rookie extension eligible this summer, so July 1st or whatever it is. So he could just sign that extension and come off the thing. The question is, I guess, do you give him the rookie max? I would. And I know that this is where sometimes we have disconnects in ideas between valuations of players. They'll be like, well, he hasn't earned it yet. And I go, yeah, that's cool. Don't really care. Right? Yes, there is a value in paying for what someone does. But I also think that if it means like you're locking him up and you're keeping him happy and having a decent level of confidence, which I do, of someone like Mobley growing into that max player, then I do it. I sign him. I pay him now. I get the money. Like, again, you have the rights to, as a restricted guy, you don't have to extend him. You can let the restricted process play out next offseason. That really never goes that well. I am very confident that Mobley will turn into that level of player. I've got no problem just signing that 1 year early. No worries. But again, others will disagree. And it also comes down to one of those disconnects that people think that Mobley's been this gigantic disappointment. Bro was runner-up defensive player of the year in his second NBA season. You take a guy at pick number 3 in a draft and he's the second best defender in the entire NBA in year 2, it's already a W. Like, it's already a W. Now, does he become a superstar? Not sure. but he's already an awesome defender, an unbelievable defender. And there are still offensive pops. The system doesn't completely work for him at this stage. I fully believe in Evan Mobley still. I know there are plenty of people who don't, and that's cool. The other two there are Ty Jerome and Sam Merrill will become unrestricted guys as well. We know Merrill's got the non-guarantee, which will be guaranteed. But that's some big decisions. Mitchell, LeVert, and Mobley all coming off the books after this coming season. Today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. The NBA Finals are almost here. One more day to go. And if you're looking to get those tickets for the NBA Finals, well, Game Time is the app that you need to be checking out. Killer last minute deals, all in pricing. You get the views from your seat as well. So if you're in Boston, you're in Dallas, and you're looking to get to one of these NBA Finals games, well, Game Time is the place where you go. The flash deals for other events, music, comedy, theater, other sporting events. Maybe you've got some minor league baseball in your area. Maybe you're going to go see the NHL, Stanley Cup Finals as well. There's so many different things that are available on Game Time at all of these great prices with great features that they have. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets for the NBA Finals with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create the account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account, redeem the code. LOCKEDONNBA. $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, that's the overview of this squad. Let's take a look at their starting group. There's only 5 guys I'm going to talk about because we know who those starters were. There was really no debate all through the season as to who those players were that were starting. And we'll start with the Don. Don is good. We know this. He was awesome this season. Had things gone at the trajectory that they were heading, he would have made All-NBA team for me very comfortably. But he only played 55 games, so he didn't qualify. 35 minutes a night. He's 28. This is bang smack middle of the prime. The big red flag for me with Don is a consistent playoff failure. Whether that is, it's not all him, but the teams that he is on, because he is a number one as a quite small guard, those problems are hard to overcome. But then also, whatever the hell it was that was going on with his knee for the last 2 months of the season, that's where I go, yeah, that's not great. Like, what happened? You were killing it, and then your knee just, and without anything like really specific happening, your knee was just done. And it took ages, and he wasn't the same. And then where you look at it and you go, oh, like, this is what happens when you get to 30 or 31 and your knee is worse and you can't do anything as you did. Well, the contract is going to look disgusting. And now you should absolutely still be giving him that max extension, but there are some flaggy things there. I would say this is by far his best fantasy season. 9th ranked player in -1. 30th on Yahoo, 11th on points. There's a lot of talk. I saw Matt Smith talk about this yesterday, about the dearth of quality at the end of the first round. I don't really see many people talking about Don Mitchell there. They should. I think, again, uncertainty. What are they doing with this team? Where is he? But he seems relatively okay. I know he only played 55 games. And I know he had the knee problem, but I think he's got to be in that mix as a late first round player. 26 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, over 3 dribbles, almost 2 steals. Now, to be fair, those 1.8 steals per game, if they're 1.4, well, he's not a first-round player. We know what happens with steals. We know the variability of player numbers. And steals being the highly variable number that if they drop, which they will, well, they most likely will, then the value won't be there. He shot 46 from the field, 87 from the line, 54 on his 2s and 37 on his 3s. Is there scope for Mitchell to be a more efficient player? Slightly. I wouldn't bank on it though. One of the things that he always needed all through his career to become a first-round player was get the steals back up, but also get to the line more. And he's been able to do that. We'll see whether it holds. The player comps for him are wild. Number one, you look at that and go, Eddie Jones, really? Yeah. Eddie Jones, I think that was Eddie Jones' final season in Charlotte, year 6 of Eddie Jones. He was an actual beast, especially fantasy-wise. His numbers were insane. The second best player comp was year 6, the 1989-90 season of Michael Jordan. That's the first year before, it's the last year before the Bulls' first title. Obviously, Mitchell is not Jordan. We know this is, but it's about the shape of the game, defensive ability, deflections, attempt rates, free throw rates. Pretty impressive numbers. The impact stats were through the roof. 98th percentile EPM, 99th percentile CPM. But what I do want to highlight is that his passer rating ranked as only 77th. Now, every time that Darius Garland was out, Mitchell would start at point guard. And people will say, is he a point guard? Is he a shooting guard? What is he? He's not an elite level passer. 6 assists is really nice. It's really good for us in fantasy. But as a passer, as that number one guy and you sort of started to see this when the knee injury became a problem towards the end of the season. Not that he's a bad passer, but he's not elite at passing. That when those injuries started to drag him down and he couldn't do the things he did early in the season, his passing doesn't unlock as much as it does with other players. And that's going to lead to a lot of fluctuation, I think, in his value and a heavy reliance on being able to do everything at peak level the way that he did this season. So that's why I wanted to include that number there. Let's talk Evan Mobley. Because again, I think there are obviously different ideas about Mobley as a player. There will be plenty of people who think he's a big disappointment. There will be plenty of people who think he's still destined for stardom. And some people like me that think you might already be there. You just don't pay attention to it enough. Well, that sounds harsh, but maybe we just don't value the things that he's great at. He's only 23. He played 50 games this season, Mobley, so that knee injury really hurt. He came back earlier than I expected. He only played 31 minutes again. So there is unbelievable scope here for high-level improvement. 34 minutes a night, more games, and he's 23, man. Like, he's not going to peak for 4 more years. He finished 42nd in -1, 50th in points. He averaged 16 and 9.5. Playing power forward, 9.5 boards. Half a three on 37%. Very low volume, but it's encouraging. He's been a 28% shooter the first 2 seasons from 3, up to 37 this season. Maintained 60% on his 2s, up to 72 from the line. Over 3 assists, which is a hidden part of his game. Doesn't get steals, but 1.4 blocks. And we know what it's going to be for him. When he plays full-time center, I am very, very confident that Mobley will be a top 20 guy without question. 2-point percentage will rise. Rebounds will rise. Blocks will rise. Scoring will rise. Minutes will rise. He will be top 20 without any concern for me. So, I doubt that the person who has him in your Dynasty League is annoyed or worried or anything like that. But if they are, gauge it, test the waters. You will not, I don't think, be able to buy Evan Mobley at any price cheaper than where we are now. We are 3 years in. He is 23 years of age. At some point, he will be a full-time center, and then he will start a 5-year run of a top 20 player would be my guess. The 2 best comps for him this season, interestingly, number 1, Bam Adebayo year 3. We love Bam Adebayo. The second one, I think it was Tim Bontemps, wasn't it? Fan of the show, who said that was criticizing Mobley. I know he is not a Mobley fan the way I am, but the comp was Derek Favors, year 5, and that's exactly what Tim said, and I get that. A guy that sort of played out of position at power forward, who's not really reliable as a shooter, really good defender, but where's the offensive juice? And maybe it never comes for Mobley. That's possible, Tim, and everyone else who thinks that. And the numbers he put up this season are definitely, obviously, in line with what Derek Favors did. But I still believe that there is way more from Mobley that we can get out of him to really elevate. But I could be wrong. 86th percentile EPM, 84th CPM. Really happy with that still. He just, despite being a good shooter, sorry, let me rephrase that. This is where we also need to, and I'm to blame here also for saying that right now, but we also need to get this idea of you hit a good percentage of your shots from 3, you are not a good shooter. Someone was pushing back when I was talking Anthony Black in the Magic once. Mr. Black, 2 days ago, all right? And they said, no, look, you say he's not a good shooter. He actually hit 39% from 3. Okay, that's cool. He took 90 attempts, like 95 attempts. So if he hit 3 more threes, he was a 42% shooter. If he missed his next 3, he was a 36% shooter. These sample sizes are not important. They're so small. You need 600 attempts to really stabilize where you are. So I say all this to Mobley being a 60% 2-point guy, a 37% 3-point guy, but the shot quality metric, which measures the value or the ability of you as a shooter, has him 22nd percentile. So while they're encouraging numbers, we're not getting excited yet. There's still plenty of room to grow, and it may not ever. Him playing center marginalizes the concern around that a little bit. I'm still really big, if you can't tell, I'm still really big on Evan Mobley as we move forward. But if you're not, I also get why. Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app. It's got more than 5 million members now. 5 million. It's the most fun and it's the most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You pick more or less on at least two individual player stats, and you get your shot to win up to 100 times your entry in cash. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You make your PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on between 2 of 6 players' individual stat projections, and you get locked in. And PrizePicks also has a bunch of promotions as well. They have they lower selected player stat projections on Tuesdays. That increases your chances of getting those wins. And get your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Friday. So many different ways to play over there on PrizePicks. And now also, we've got something new as the end of basketball season comes through on PrizePicks. They've got esports every Wednesday and Saturday in June. If your lineup doesn't win, you get your entry fee back. Choose from Counter-Strike 2, Call of Duty, League of Legends, and more. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the PrizePicks app, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It is that easy. All right. Let's go through some more of these Cavs players. We are going to start with Jarrett Allen, who always something weird it feels with Jarrett. He's a good player. Without question, he's a good player. I thought there was a chance after his poor playoffs last season that he would get traded in the offseason. They would open things up for Evan Mobley. They didn't do that. Allen played 77 games. He's 26 years of age. He played 32 minutes a night. He had an injury early in the season, but came back really quickly and was massively strong for this team when Mobley went down. But then we get to the playoffs. He didn't play. He had this rib injury and leaked reports which immediately come out after the game of the team or his fellow players questioning his toughness because he wouldn't take injections into his ribs to get out there and play. Shout out to Tyrod Taylor. Whatever. I don't know the man's situation. I don't know the individual scenario. To be fair, I'm not sure that his fellow players do, but there's a clear... The fact that came out as quickly as it did means that it's not something that people have to go digging for. Let's put it that way. And again, the specter over this team, the clear thing is Evan Mobley is going to be their center. So what do? Do they trade Jarrett Allen for Brandon Ingram? Get some forwards in there? What do? I don't know what the odds are. Like every time you want to say that what are the odds of someone gets traded, the more likely, if you just say he won't get traded, you're going to be right like 98% of the time. But it just always feels like this with Jarrett, with the Mobley thing, these reports that come out, the lights were too bright meme from last season. 48th in -1. Yahoo ranked him 29th. Do not take him in round 3. Please don't. 16.5 points with 10.5 rebounds. Good rim protector, but 1 block. 1.1 blocks. Now, what he was able to do this season was really improve the passing numbers. That's interesting to see. Not sure that's something that develops massively, but it was something that happened when Darius Garland was out and when Evan Mobley was out. He was able to do that. 63% from the field. He hit his free throws. Doesn't take threes, but really efficient stuff. But I think part of the problem here is, and you see this with the player comps, is that number 1 player comp is year 5 of Clint Capella. Number 2 is year 6 of Jakob Poeltl. That's who he is. A points, rebounds, field goal percentage player, and he didn't block many shots. Now, he's still really good. 16 and 10 is great. Almost 3 assists, 64% shooting is great. He's 26. He's sort of at his prime, but the only thing I look at there and go, well, that can get better is maybe he has a season where it pushes back to 1.7 blocks. But to me, it's really clear he's not the answer. He's not the guy for them. Whether that's fair or not, that's not the discussion. 88th percentile EPM, 92nd in CPM. Rim defense, we can sort of see that by the low block numbers as well, but only 86th percentile. For a guy that's what you think he does, be a guy that's out there protecting the rim, like 86 is fine, but it's not 95th, it's not 97th. It's down. And he did lose a little bit on that end of the court, that side of the ball this season. So he's going to be probably a relatively safe pick in the 5th round of fantasy drafts. But always remember, there are these sort of players who you feel safe in there and then something just randomly happens. like Nick Claxton this season. Things just drop. Now, I don't think that Allen's 32 minutes or his 1.1 blocks or even his 63% shooting is going to fall, but that 63 could become 58 really quickly, and then the value's done. Safe, solid enough, definitely not touching in round 4. Like, not interested, not close. And let's talk about another guy that I'm pretty big on. Like him a lot, but he was really quite bad this season. And that's Darius Garland. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that he was good. I am going to tell you that it was quite strange what happened to him. 24 years of age, only 57 games, 33 minutes, Darius Garland. Copped a smack in the face, I think it was the start of last season, and then he missed time with his eye injury and had a lot of injuries, and then came back fine and was great. This season, got a hit in the jaw, had to have jaw surgery, couldn't eat for months, lost all weight, lost all his strength, and came back and just honestly was terrible. But to be fair, he was also not great before the jaw injury. He was worse after it, but he wasn't great before it. Now, I'm going to go, I don't know if off topic is correct, because it's not really off topic, it's on topic, so we're talking Darius Garland, but you will hear think pieces, podcasts, videos, fantasy and otherwise, about Darius Garland and the Cavs, and you go, oh, well, he just obviously can't do it when Mitchell's there. And I beg everybody, people creating content, people doing podcasts, people consuming it, people thinking about it, to just have a memory that lasts more than one season. Look, we literally saw Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell the season before play together, and Garland was way better than he was this season. This is not... Now, I agree that Mitchell being there limits Garland's ceiling. Garland could have been a top 20 player if Mitchell wasn't there. I got no problem with that. That's pretty obvious. But to say that the downturn in Garland's production this season is because Mitchell was there is not true. To say that he will never be good if Mitchell is there is not true. Because we literally, and I say literally not in the Chris Traeger sense, we literally have seen it. We have seen him do it. It has happened in our lifetimes. It's just more than one season ago, so most people ignore that. So, what was the factor? Was there interpersonal things? Maybe. Was there Garland issues in the locker room with the coach? I don't know. Was it the jaw? Also, maybe. 53rd in -1, 75th in points. His ADP was 40. He probably is like a 4th round player, and if Mitchell is not there, he's a 2nd round player. People will tell you that it was just a disgusting season from him. Was it? 18, 3 and 6.5 assists, 1.3 steals, shot 45 and 83. He shot 37 on threes. Yeah, he probably could be a 40% shooter. 50% on twos, you want him to be a 52 guy. Yeah, he turned it over a lot, but still had an over 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. He can be a 20-point scorer, a 7.5 assist guy. He can be a 46% shooter with 40% from 3. He can do all that. But to talk about Garland being this disaster this season, I don't think he's accurate. What is interesting to me is his best 2 player comps were both Brandon Jennings, who was really good for a period of time, but had struggles. Year 6 and year 4 of Brandon Jennings. Now, you don't want Garland's career to go the way of Brandon Jennings, but also Brandon Jennings' career went that way because he tore his Achilles. Garland has had a lot of injuries add up, which is somewhat concerning. But like I said with Mobley, I'll say it with Garland. There has never been a better time to get him at a discount in a dynasty format. Because there is a prevailing or pervasive. I made up a new word. I do it all the time. Just call me Mr. Webster's. Idiot. He can be better than this. There is this wisdom that he can't do while Mitchell's there. Maybe you wait. There's the balance here in a dynasty format. Because if Mitchell doesn't sign the extension and gets traded, the value of Garland goes through the roof. Right? People will then start to value much higher. But if Mitchell does sign that extension, then Garland's value in dynasty will drop even further. So then the buy low increases because, again, he can do it next to Mitchell. He can't max himself out, but he can do it. So there is a window here to get a real discount on him. It might become more of a discount over the summer if Mitchell signs. Or the value might rise back up if Mitchell's gone. 72nd percentile EPM, 81st in CPM. What was, again, I'm not going to discount how bad he was with the turnovers. He was much worse than any other season. His creation turnover percentage, which measures your turnover percentage in comparison to how much box creation you're doing, which is a better way than just turnover percentage, 23rd percentile. So sucked. Terrible. Right? That can improve. And there's just a lot of factors. I am still in on Garland. You may not be. I'm not going to have to invest much in him in a draft, most likely. If I'm getting him in round 7, I love that. Round 6, absolutely. Just going to depend how others view him. The last starter. The Winter Soldier, Maximilian Strus. Bulls legend Max Strus. He's 28, bang in the middle of his prime. I did not love the contract that they gave him, not because I don't like Strus or the money. It was more like, he's a little small. I don't love the defensive backcourt of Mitchell, Garland, and Strus. Didn't love it. And I think we had some problems with that this season. I would have liked them to go bigger. But in the end, Strus was he worth the contract? Probably. He had some wild hot streaks and cold streaks. But he did a ton of things that we've never really seen him do before. But what we did get is underwhelming three-point shooting, which is actually the norm for him. We look at Max Strus as an elite shooter because he does a lot of elite shooting things. He takes a lot of threes. He takes a lot of them off movement, a lot of tough shots. But for us, from a fantasy perspective, I don't care about that because if they're not going in, they're not going in. So there's this idea that Strus is all shooting, and that's not true because the shooting's not good from a traditional field goal percentage perspective. He finished 127th in -1 with an ADP of 142. He was not drafted really anywhere. 22% of leagues drafted him. He was picked up really early. He had some nice games early on, but overall, I would say that I'm not certain he's a draftable player next season. 12 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists was a big surprise. He started out the year with big steal and block numbers. They disappeared, 0.9 and 0.4 respectively. He shot 42 from the field, which hurts, which includes 35% from 3. I was surprised when the Crafted site didn't blow up because the top comparisons with him were cross-racial, and, we never can do that. Number 1 was Nick Batum, year 7, but number 2, year 8 of Luol Deng, Cavs legend. So, Strus fit in nicely. I still worry about the size and the defensive ability, but he improved that. He improved his passing, but the shooting just isn't where it needs to be, and the usage is really low. 87th percentile EPM, 77th on Crafted, and his passer rating, again, we talk about the improvements. 79th percentile, that actually ranks higher than Donovan Mitchell's. He's 28. There is going to be a decline coming in a year or two. I just don't think there's upside. He's very high with Strus, and I think there are risks of some stuff falling away here. But that is the starters of this team. Who else do we need to talk about? Well, there's one guy that we always keep an eye on, and that's Caris LeVert, who is a player with a distinct difference between their value in a points league and their value in a category league. 119th in -1 rankings, 96th in points. He played 68 games. He played 29 minutes a game. He's 30. His ADP was 144. He averaged 14, 4, and 5 with a steal. 1.1 steals, actually. Shot 42 and 77, including 33 on threes and 49 on twos. And it's the same thing all the time with LeVert. Is that he can rack up good numbers. 14, 4, and 5 is it's pretty solid. But the shooting is just going to hurt continually. He'll have hot streaks. He'll have cold streaks. If he plays 33 minutes, you use him, especially in points leagues. If he plays 25, you don't. His EPM was okay, 79th percentile, 66th in Crafted. But 33 from 3 is just not good enough. The comps, well, year 12, Tracy McGrady, and year 11, Tracy McGrady. All right. That is obviously a long way into McGrady's career. But I see it. I see the scoring, some threes, steals, rebounds, assists. I see the sort of shape of what he does. But overall, just not a high priority fantasy player. Too much fluctuation, and you can see his true shooting was in the 19th percentile because he's not a great free throw guy. He's not a good field goal guy. He's a bad three-point shooter, and he takes a lot of them. Overall, I just don't know where we go with here. He's 30. There's probably going to be decline. He's had a lot of injury problems. He's going to be one of those players that I'm not sure we bother drafting, but we always want to use him when the situation arises, and I don't really see why that or how that will change. Let's talk Isaac Okoro, who, 4 years down now, like we talked about, restricted free agency coming up. He's only 23 still. He was incredibly young when he was drafted. Played 27 minutes a night. He'd been a starter most of his career until this season, but he just can't get it done fantasy-wise. 236th in -1, 9 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 0.8 steals. And if you're going to be a defensive specialist, you got to get defensive stats. In 27 minutes to get 0.8 steals and 0.5 blocks is just not good enough. 39% on threes is really good, but it's not huge volume. 57% on twos is pretty good. 49 overall. 68 from the line is where it does show out, though. The 2 comps for him do make a little bit of sense. It's Josh Richardson, rookie year, and year 3 of the Shark Bruce Brown, which I think was Brown in Brooklyn. EPM had him 69th percentile, CPM 68th, and this is where you need to do more, your defensive turnover percentage, 21st percentile. If you're a defensive wing, do something. Create some defensive events. He can defend pretty well, but it doesn't mean anything for us fantasy-wise. And honestly, even in the NBA, you need to be able to do something along those lines, because the offense is still a real problem. It's developed a bit. The shooting is better. It's not great. It's better, but nope. Part of the value in shooting is the team has to respect you, the opposition, and they don't. So it doesn't matter if he's hitting 39% on limited attempts, because if people aren't dragging out and guarding him out there, well, it doesn't open things up for everybody else in this game, which is literally 5-on-5, not 1-on-1. Let's talk about a bloke who does shoot, and that's Slamming Sammy Merrill. He fits the stereotype. He fits the prototype. He's a white guy and he shoots. 28 years of age, 61 games, 18 minutes a night. He was a very late second-round pick of the Bucks 2 years ago. We've talked about a lot about him on some of the draft prospect shows, about the way that he did everything in college. He was a high-usage player who had assists and just did everything, but had to adjust his game to be a role player in the NBA, like so many guys will have to do. 309th in fantasy, 8 points, 2.3 dribbles, 93 from the line. He shot better on threes than he did on twos because he just never took any twos. Think about this. He hit 2.3 triples per game. 2.3 triples. That is 7 points a game. So on average, he hit 1 2-pointer or less than 1 2-pointer every game. Yeah, no, actually less than 1 2-pointer every 2 games because there's free throws in there. All he did was get up threes. He got them up at ridiculous numbers. He is a lightning trigger guy, but there's nothing else. 2 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 0.3 steals, 93 from the line, but never gets there. He doesn't do anything apart from shoot. He did it well. He opens things up a lot, but fantasy upside not really there. His 2-player comps, I'm going to be honest with you, no idea. Roger Mason Jr., year 5. All right, I have heard of Roger Mason a little bit, but this bloke. Eldridge Rakazna, year 2. Shout out to Eldridge, who was a 40%, I looked up, 40% three-point shooter in his time playing for Denver, I think it was. Merrill was 77th in EPM percentile and 47th for crafted, but as a shooter, the shooting quality, the shooting metric, 100th percentile, one of the best shooters, if not one of the best, not the best, but you're right up there in terms of the guys you want shooting. Obviously doesn't finish, just shoots. Very good at it. Clear role. No fantasy upside. But we love that role is there. And when you're looking for those threes, he could go 1 of 10, which he did a couple of times, or he could go 7 of 8 multiple times, which he also did. The last guy I do want to talk about is two-way legend Craig Porter. Much, much older rookie. He's 24 already. He played 51 games, 13 minutes a night only, but there was a time earlier in the season when, well, we know Ricky Rubio was out and then he ended up retiring. Ty Jerome, old milk, he had that ankle problem that no one updated us on ever. I think he played 1 game. Garland was out. LeVert, I think, was hurt at that point, so Porter had to play. And Porter had a game in college that was very reminiscent of a Derek White. A guy with some iffy shooting coming out of college, but just unbelievable defensive numbers, unbelievable block numbers for a guard. And he came into the NBA, and I loved what I saw. 348th in -1 rankings. He averaged 5.6 points in 13 minutes. Let's double that. Let's make him a 26-minute-a-night player. So I can read you these numbers, but let's just do the double rate. Let's just, again, doesn't always work that way, but 26 minutes is an interesting number. That's 11 points with half a three. Doesn't really shoot him, even though 35% doesn't shoot him. 11 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, 0.6 blocks in 26 minutes. Pretty good. I'm okay with that. 51 from the field, 54 on his twos, 35 on his threes. What I hate are these player comps, but I will say this. It might not be fun to say, yeah, Alfred Payton year 3 and Markelle Fultz year 6, which, by the way, was Fultz last season, which was a pretty good season. And if you're going to top out as Alfred Payton or Markelle Fultz, then why should we have hype or hope? Well, Alfred Payton and Markelle Fultz were solid in those seasons. This is an undrafted rookie. Being similar to what Markelle Fultz did last season or Alfred Payton when he was a starter, that's actually really good. Not everyone's going to be a star or a high-level starter, but being a capable rotation player, albeit with massive shooting concerns, but being a real pest defensively, I think that's huge for Craig. Now, the advanced stuff isn't a huge fan, and there was something really interesting here. 29th percentile EPM, 53rd in crafted. But his box creation was in the 82nd percentile, so when he was on the court, he did a lot, which is not something you expect from a 23-year-old at the time rookie who was undrafted, to have that level of responsibility creation-wise. We saw when we talked, throwback again to Mr. Black, and looked at his creation and offensive load, he did nothing as the 6th overall pick in the draft point guard. He started a point guard, and he never did anything. He never had any sort of offensive responsibility or creation responsibility. Porter did. This is only of relevance to most people, or for Dynasty League players usually. I don't really see Porter ever becoming a high-level starter or even a starter in general. But enough to be a guy that I think sticks around for at least a few years, and we'll see where the development goes. But to get a guy like that for free, convert him mid-season, get usable minutes out of him, I think that is, as the kids would say, a big, fat dub. I'm cool. All right, that will bring us to the end of the show. So, thumbs, bells, big W's. Drop them all on the video and on the audio. You double bang and you thumb up and you follow and you do all that stuff. You know what to do, guys. We're done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.